When I started writing the book, it was around the time when the leak came out that the Supreme Court was going to overturn Roe v. Wade. So I knew then that it was going to be relevant, very soon in many, many ways. Historical fiction should feel more historical than this.
Right.
I wasn't setting out to write something that was so current. As I'm living in 2025 and watching all the things and hearing all the things and kind of dealing with all the things that everyone else is dealing with in this moment. Yeah, it's frustrating. It's frustrating to feel like things, haven't changed as much as we fooled ourselves into believing that they had.
Welcome to The Stacks, a podcast about books and the people who read them. I'm your host, Tracy Thomas, and today I am joined by award-winning author Mia McKenzie. Mia is also the creator of Black Girl Dangerous, a media project that centers queer and trans people of color. Her newest book, These Heathens, take us on a weekend journey to Atlanta with a 17-year-old girl named Doris who is trying to get an abortion in the 1960s. Today, Mia and I talk about writing historical fiction, which includes real-life figures, her representation of the queer community and why it's so important, and how her grandmother inspired her main character, Doris. A quick reminder, everything we talk about on each episode of The Stacks can be found in the link in the show notes. And if you love this podcast and you want inside access to it, you can head to patreon.com/thestacks to join our bookish community, The Stacks Pack. And be sure to subscribe to my newsletter, tracythomas.substack.com, for more hot takes on books and pop culture. Now it's time for my conversation with Mia McKenzie. All right, everybody, I am so excited. I am joined today by Mia McKenzie. She is the author of the brand new book, These Heathens. She's also the author of other books, but today we're going to talk about this brand new book, These Heathens. So Mia, welcome to The Stacks.
Thank you so much, Tracy, for having me.
I'm really excited to have you. I want to say, what year did Skyfalling come out? 2021?
Yeah, 2021.
So in 2021, you were in our 10 Best Books of the Year episode. You were featured as one of our 10 best books. Yeah.
Nice. Cool.
So it's nice to have you here for this new book, which hopefully will make the list again.
Yeah. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Will you tell folks, we always start here in about 30 seconds or so, will you just tell us about These Heathens?
Yeah. So These Heathens is what you get when comedy and historical fiction mess around in the backseat of a 1960 Studebaker convertible. That's basically how I'm looking at it. So it tells the story of Doris Steele, a character I based on my own grandmother, who also shares her name. Doris is a very religious and also quite horny small town teenager who asks her favorite teacher to help her get an abortion. So they go to Atlanta, where Doris finds herself suddenly immersed in, the civil rights movement, which is happening, a lot of stuff happening right then with student activism. And she also finds herself kind of in the midst of the hidden lives of queer Black people. And she's from, she's very small town religious, and this is very, very scandalous to her. So she comes face to face with remarkable figures like Bayard Rustin and Coretta Scott King and Diane Nash and Martin Luther King Jr. They all show up, and others. And she comes face to face like with herself, she with dreams for her life that she didn't even know she had. She sort of didn't even know how to dream about life. So it's a story about choice. It's a story about what becomes possible when women get to make decisions about our lives. And it's a story about what happens when Martin Luther King flirts with you over a plate of ribs. And 60 years later, you have to still explain to everybody that he's not the one who knocked you up.
Yes. Oh my God. I love that. The book has such a fantastic opening page. It basically starts there. The book starts with he's not the father.
Right.
And I just thought it was so great. And I'm curious how you, as a writer, as a storyteller, how you think about the beginnings of your books. How important is it for you to get the beginning right? Or are you a person that says the beginning just has to be there? It's my job to sort of build the rest of the book. And if you are a beginning has to be right person, how do you know when you get it right?
Such good questions. I think, I tend to look, at least now, at novel writing. For me, my process is very much making sure I know what's going to happen in the middle and that I'm getting the middle right, and putting kind of a lot of thought and energy into that, even in the beginning when I'm figuring out what the book is. I know now if I don't have a middle, I don't have a book. I just have an idea.
Okay.
And so, but that being said, to me, beginnings are easy. Beginnings are like so like inspired. And so, you have this idea, you have this concept, you have these characters who are coming to you. And for me, the beginning always just sort of comes together. It's kind of this really easy thing. And so I think too much about how a story begins. I think my stories begin in different ways, but that's always felt like it's just kind of flowing. I think the way, if I'm thinking about a beginning, I'm always starting with character, though. I always want to sort of be able to show the reader, who is this character? Who are you going to spend all this time with? Or who are these main characters? And particularly in Sky Falling and in this book, which both have, sort of kind of one main character, and a strong voice, really wanting to showcase the voice of the character too, that you're going to be with for the duration of the book, and making sure you kind of, what this person sounds like and who they are right from, the first sentence.
Yeah. If middle is the thing for you that you are the most concerned with, how do you know when you get that right? What's your process like for fleshing the whole thing out? How much are you, I guess the question is like, how much is the middle a struggle for you? Or is it something that you're more thinking about like in an outline phase?
I'm thinking about it in an outline phase. So the way that I work now, is that I want to outline the whole thing. I want to know everything that's going to happen. And then, of course, in the writing process, many other things end up happening. So it's not necessarily what you thought it was going to be in the outline. But at least when I'm going in, I want to know what I think this book is going to be. And so I'm thinking about the middle there in that first outline, even before it's an outline, really, when I'm just sort of putting it together in my head. And I guess I know when I get it right, when it feels like nothing is, there's no holes, I guess. There's no sort of empty space in the story.
Yeah.
Where I feel like everything that's happening is moving the story forward. There's no sort of lag. I feel like, the scariest thing is you don't want to write a book and then the middle it just starts to kind of drag there.
No, you don't want to do that. And you don't want to read that.
Right, exactly. Because that's how you lose a reader. Like, nobody wants to read that. And so getting that right, so that there's a momentum that you're creating. You're starting in the beginning and you want it to just get better and better. And it's just like the all of the themes that you're working with, they're just getting more and more clear. Tensions are ratcheting up, and more, depending on, kind of what you're writing and what your story is, stuff is happening in a big way. When you get to the middle, it's kind of like, this is where stuff should be happening in a big, big way, to kind of start to drive you through the most important parts of the story. And so I know I'm doing that right when I'm excited about that part. It's really easy to be excited about the beginning. Like I said, it's just so inspired and it's all new and it's so fresh in the characters and it's all just, woo, everything is great. But to feel really inspired in the middle when you're kind of getting into the really important stuff about the book, the things that you're trying to say, and to be excited about that part, I think that's how I know that I'm doing something that's working.
And then we haven't talked about the endings at all. How do you think about endings?
Yeah, endings are tricky. Endings are just kind of like, because not as hard as middles, but I would say sometimes I don't know how I want to end. I don't know like where I always want it to go, but again, I try to figure it out in the outline, so I'm sort of prepared for it.
Yeah, I have to say, this book has such beautiful beginning, middle, and end. Like I do, as a reader, I was reading it so quickly. I was so locked in. And we kind of get to that third quarter. I was just like, oh my God, what is going to happen?
Right.
Like, what is going on?
That's what you want. That's what you want as a writer. That third quarter has to really, really be working.
And the third quarter, I think, is probably, like it's probably the most important to me as a reader. And I just feel like I sort of knew you were an outline writer in reading the book. I was like, oh, Mia McKenzie has a very clear idea of what she wants to happen in this book. And I appreciate that as a reader because you feel taken care of. I was like, I don't know where this is going, but I know it's going somewhere that I'm going to be like interested in.
Right.
Because, you know, sometimes you read a book and you're like, where is this going? I might want to quit soon,
Right.
you know? And it's like, those are two very different, where is this going? And I just felt very, you know, I felt safe. I felt like Doris was safe. Like I wasn't worried about anybody. And it was just like such a lovely time. So I appreciate the care that you put into it.
Thank you. I'm glad that it comes through.
For sure. I want to talk about historical fiction.
Mm-hmm.
So in this book, as you mentioned, obviously Doris is based on your grandmother, but she's a fictional character. There's a lot of fictional characters, but we are bumping up against some real life legends and icons.
Right.
So what is your obligation? How did you feel responsible to taking care of their real lives and their legacies as you sort of put them into this fictional world?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think, so everyone who appears in the story who is a real person, you know, these are all people who I respect. And so when you're writing historical, or when I'm writing historical fiction, and there's real people showing up, that makes a lot of difference if they're people that you respect and you want to. I don't want to talk shit about Martin Luther King, you know.
Yeah,
you know,
that would be what we call an unpopular opinion,
right. But at the same time, I want to show. I mean, there's no point in me putting in a version of Martin Luther King that's just what you already expect, and you know, this sort of like. Yeah, that's not going to be surprising in any way. That's not going to be something that you haven't already seen. That's just kind of the, you know, encyclopedia version already, right? Because as a writer, what's interesting about that? Like, why show up to this version of Martin Luther King just to get that, or any of the other characters in the book who are real life people? So I want to find something in each character that is, I guess, surprising, that is new, but also based on my research about things that they might have said and done, right? So I'm not just completely making up something that's just like so outrageous that they would never have said, you know, or like participated in any way. I'm looking at conversations that they've had, you know, people who said, oh, I talked to this person, I talked to them about this. I had a conversation with Coretta Scott King about that, you know, in some memoir or some interview, and finding these little pieces of things that people have said that to help you start to create a larger picture. Because everything that's happening in the book with these historical figures, it's all sort of, none of it is in the public eye. It's all happening in conversations with people behind closed doors, you know, just kind of in personal space. So I feel like my obligation, I don't know that I think I have an obligation necessarily. I don't know that I think of it in terms of obligation, except to, you know, show respect to people who I do respect. But then also, this is also comedic fiction. You know, this is also funny. It's also, you know, it's not meant to be a history lesson. You know, it has a lot of historical elements for sure, but it's also funny. It's goofy. You know, Martin Luther King is, you know, eating ribs and like licking the sauce off his fingertip. Like he's going to be doing that in this book. You know, it's not going to be some very reverent portrayal of him or anyone else. I'm looking for the interesting stuff. I'm looking for the real people behind the icons.
Totally. It sort of reminded me of like Black Girl, Forrest Gump.
Right. Yeah.
You know, where it's like,
right.
It's like sort of goofy and like he's on his own journey, but he's bumping into all of these important people, or like he's part of these important moments because she's bumping into all of these people and she's sort of seeing them in a way that we don't get to see them normally. And that's like one of my favorite sort of genres of fiction is like I call them like Forrest Gump books, where it's like, this main character is in a world that we're familiar with. I don't know if you've read Rashid Newsom's book, My Government Means to Kill Me.
I haven't.
But it's so good. And it's sort of like this Black queer Forrest Gump in Harlem or in New York City. And I think Bayard Rustin is also in that book as well, actually.
Yeah, he ought to be.
Yeah, he's sort of in all these books. But your book reminds me of Rashid's book, and they're both so much fun, and they have the comedy, and they have these like historical figures in it. Though he has some bad people in his book, bad historical figures.
Yeah.
Anyways, it sounds like you do quite a bit of research to find these nuggets. What does that look like for you, your research process?
Oh boy. Lots of scouring the internet for little tidbits of things, a lot of interview, looking for, people from the time, from the civil rights movement, from particularly the student movement that was happening in the 1960s, talking about things. I found a lot of cool oral histories from different archives and museums, and also different books on, there's like so many just small details in not, nonfiction books about the civil rights movement, sort of reading really, really closely and finding little things. So when I'm in the book, there's when Doris goes and spends time with the folks who are doing self-defense for the activists, carrying guns and making sure that they're safe as they're doing their nonviolent organizing. I read a lot about those people and the work that they did and the conversations that they had about it and the way that they talked about it. That's kind of my favorite. Some of my favorite stuff in the story. So yeah, lots of reading books, like I said, interviews, and kind of scouring stuff. I mean, it's a long, writing historical fiction. It is a heavily research based thing, but also fun. I mean, I love it. I love the subject matter. I love all the questions that come up about that time, but it's tricky because as a person living in now, with the perfect vision of 2020 vision that I have now looking back, and so I have my kind of view of it as a person who kind of knows how it turned out, but writing about in a time when nobody knows how it turns out, is also a tricky thing.
How do you navigate that?
I tried to honor the different perspectives that I knew were happening then. So it's not as if, for example, everyone at the time thought the particular movements of the student movement, the particular nonviolent resistant movements, not everybody was on board with that in the first place, right? So it's not, so I don't have to like pretend that everyone was, right? People in the book are like, I don't know about this.
Right.
And, but just kind of, I think, honoring that. I think there's a way in which, the whitewashing of the civil rights movement and Black liberation movements would have us believe that it was all, it was all nonviolent organizing. It was all Martin Luther King. Everybody, all the Black folks were totally on board with that. And so some of it too is just kind of setting the record straight of like, oh no, actually there was other stuff going on, and there were other thoughts about it and opinions about it. And so that's also really interesting to me. But yeah, I think I just tried to both honor the time and understand the different ways that people were thinking about the movement at that time, and then also, I guess, bring questions into it, of like, is this are these the right choices actually? And not say yes or no, but to just make sure that question is being asked in the book.
I feel like as I was reading the book this week, every time I read historical fiction, I feel this way. I'm like, everything old is new again.
Right.
But in this particular moment, in 2025, I live in Los Angeles. So I'm currently watching, as I think the rest of the country is, what is going on with these ICE raids, the conversation around violence and nonviolence and property damage. And, I am alive in 2025, and the conversations around abortion and the conversations around queer and trans rights and representation and women's liberation and all of these things. As I'm reading your book, I'm like, wow, we're still doing this. We're still doing this. Yeah. So I'm wondering for you, I mean, I guess, when did you start working on this book? And as a person alive now, how were you impacted by current events as you were writing about events taking place 65 years ago? 65 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, when I started writing the book, it was around the time when the leak came out that the Supreme Court was going to overturn Roe v. Wade. They hadn't overturned it, but it got leaked that they were going to. And that's around the time, just before then was when I started to kind of envision the book and think about what I wanted the book to be.
Wow.
And yeah, yeah. So I knew then that it was going to be, and not just with abortion, but things were just getting real wonky, right? Things were getting in all kinds of ways real wonky. So I knew this is going to be really relevant, very soon in many, many ways. Yeah. And I think I had the same experience of just being like, this again, like I don't want this to be so relevant,
Right.
it sucks that this is so relevant, we shouldn't have to be doing, historical fiction should feel more historical than this.
Right. Right.
I wasn't setting out to write something that was so current. So yeah, I mean, I think I feel about it, as I'm living in 2025 and watching all the things and hearing all the things and kind of dealing with all the things that everyone else is dealing with in this moment. Yeah, it's frustrating. It's frustrating to feel like things, haven't changed as much as we fooled ourselves into believing that they had. And I think that's one thing that's really interesting about the novel is that like this question of like choice, right? These choices that they're making at the time in 1960, in pursuit of freedom, you can only do what you can do. You can kind of kind of give it your best effort and how it kind of turns out, you can't really know, which is sad, which is hard and sad and kind of the human condition of kind of having to fight all the time and thinking that maybe you're getting somewhere. And then, it's 65 years later and yeah, it doesn't really feel that way. So yeah, I think I love the book. I'm excited about the book. The book is so funny and so wonderful and really doesn't, in many ways, it's not a heavy, it's not a heavy novel. It's
no, it's not.
Though it deals with these heavy themes, it's hopeful and it sucks that we're kind of facing these moments. So, I mean, there's a way in which folks will say, well, we've always been facing them. And that's true. We never quite stopped facing them. But the ways in which these things are just so boldly out there again, just so in our faces all over again, it's a lot.
Yeah. Let's take a quick break and then we'll be right back. Valentine's Day is upon us and I've got love on the brain. Love for books. Duh, of course. Hello. Did you forget what podcast you're listening to? I love bringing you all great reads, exclusive author interviews, and behind the scenes book gossip. But I can only do that with your support over on Patreon and Substack. Our Stacks Patreon community, also known as the Stacks Pack, is where you can go for book club meetups, a private, very active Discord, and a year-long mega reading challenge to help you achieve all your reading goals. Plus, you also get that monthly bonus episode. Now, over on the Substack, you can subscribe to my newsletter, Unstacked, where I keep the book conversations going. I also give you a healthy dose of sports and pop culture, definitely some hot takes happening over there. And again, that bonus episode. If you don't have a few dollars to spare, don't worry. There are free options on the Substack and the Patreon to get you a little extra Stacks magic. Making this podcast is a total team effort, and by supporting my Patreon and my Substack, you allow me to support my amazing team that makes the show possible every single week. So if you or your friends are looking to meet other book lovers and support this indie podcast, come hang out with me on Patreon, Substack, or both. I would love to have you. And since we're talking about love, you can gift subscriptions to the Patreon and the Substack for that special reader in your life. For the Stacks Pack, head to patreon.com/thestacks. And for the newsletter, head to tracythomas.substack.com. And also, there are links to both in the show notes. Okay, see you in the Stacks. Okay, we're back. And I want to talk about Doris, our main character, who you mentioned is inspired by your grandmother. Can you say a little bit more about her, about that?
Yeah. So my grandmother, who was wonderful and awesome and is based on Doris in many ways, she shares Doris's just way with words. My grandmother had just an incredible way to turn a phrase and to describe something, a lot of which is in the book, and then comes out of Doris's mouth. And I was once talking to my grandmother. So my grandmother had 5 children, and 4 of them were born in Philly, where I'm from. And one of them she had when she was younger, when she was still in Georgia, my uncle. So I never knew growing up who my uncle's father was. And I always wondered, I don't know that I always wondered, but eventually as I got older, I wondered about it because nobody ever talked about it. Nobody ever said anything about it. And so one day I was an adult and I was visiting my grandmother, and I don't know, I just got up the courage. I was a little bit nervous to get in her business like that because nobody talked about it. And so I asked her, I said, I asked who his father was. And she said, "Oh, nobody," and kind of waved me away. And so I thought, well, that could have many different, there could be a lot of reasons for that kind of a reaction. There could be, something traumatic happened. And it also just could be, some no good, some not worth talking about individual. And then she kind of, she said that, and then that was the end of the conversation. I just let it go after that. But I just always thought about it. And then as this story, I write about my grandmother a lot. There's other characters. The character in my first novel, also based on her. She's just a really interesting person. And as the story began to come together, I just thought about this idea of like the father was nobody, and how in a story that comes to life. That's kind of where it started from, the father is nobody idea. And so what questions might arise if her position is the father is nobody, right? You can't, you especially for a young Black woman saying the father is nobody, well, people are going to have questions. They're not going to just let you, say the father is nobody and leave you alone and go about their business. They're going to be way up in your business about it. And so then, all that sort of starts to come together from that position of, okay, well, what questions are people going to ask? What stories might come of that? What rumors might come of that? Who is she around? What dots are people going to connect in the wrong ways to get you to something quite outrageous, but in a really fun and interesting way?
Is it a challenge for you as a writer to write about a person, or like to write a story where a main person in the book is nobody?
Well, I mean, I think what I tried to do was to not make, that they're not that they're kind of not, it really doesn't matter. The sort of position of Doris is, this is my business, right? It's not your business. And that's really it. It's a thing where someone is pregnant, so there must be a father, right? There has to be someone, but also it doesn't matter. That's not what this story is about. So no, that felt pretty easy to do.
Yeah. One of the things that comes up a lot in the book is Doris getting information from magazines and Jet and Ebony. And it happens so often. There'll be a person and she'll be like, oh, I just read about them and this, or I just heard about this and that. And I'm wondering, I just curious about that piece of it. Why did you want to include those magazines? And also, what do you think that having her be a magazine girly gives her or tells us about her?
Well, in 1960, that you don't have a lot of options for how you get your information about things, So, and she's also, she's poor. She lives in a little tiny rural town. She doesn't have a television. To watch TV, she has to go down to her friend's house who has like the only television, in the neighborhood.
Right.
And so, when I was growing up in the 1980s, we got Jet and Ebony, all the time. And I did have TV, but there wasn't a lot of talk, about Black people on TV. TV was very, very, very extremely white. And you didn't get, like, if you wanted to know about the Black celebrities and what they were up to, you had to look at Ebony and Jet. Like, that's where it was. And so I remember as a kid, we had just, stacks of them, we would get them and then we would keep them and we would look at them again and again. Because that's the only place that we could find that stuff. And so, certainly in 1960, that was the case. If you wanted to, there was no show that was going to be highlighting Black performers and stuff. So, using Ebony and Jet as kind of a way into that world, and what Doris would have seen and read and known about these people was really fun and felt really nostalgic for me because I used to look at, in the 80s, it was like, I used to love looking at Jet because they would have Debbie Allen would be in it all the time.
Yes.
And I always say Debbie Allen made me gay. Like Debbie Allen is like, like was like my first crush when I was a little kid. But yeah, I used to like scour if there was like Debbie on the cover or Debbie somewhere in there, I was going to be just like all over that magazine. And so it was really fun to kind of add that piece to it.
I loved it. I loved it so much. I mean, again, another conversation that we're having right now about media and like, it just felt so, I don't know, of the moment, even though as you said before, unfortunately these fights are going on constantly, but I loved seeing it. I loved how everything she knew she got from the magazines. And I think also like because she has this way with words, I was thinking like, I'm sure she's learning about words as she's reading these magazines too. Like she's learning how to be a storyteller, which is such an important part of her story. So, I mean, you just mentioned that Debbie Allen made you gay.
Yeah.
And there's these great, there's this great piece of the book, which I don't want to say too much about how it comes in because I do think that's like slightly spoilery, but there are these queer communities in the book that we get to see in ways that are not often depicted in these ways in books or in media. And so I'm curious about, without saying too much, about this queer Black community in Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, I'm queer and I write really queer stuff. And so, in writing this book, when I knew that the main character was going to be based on my grandmother and kind of this story about the pregnancy and getting an abortion, which is made up. That didn't happen, but because my uncle exists. But
right.
But when I knew, this was going to be that story, I still, for me as a writer, like I want a lot of queer stuff happening in a novel, if I can get it. And so thinking about, if she's going to Atlanta, which is, everyone knows is like a queer Black, an important queer Black place and has always been. And now, of course, more outwardly so, right? But even then, that's still going to have been there. And so I was excited to kind of look into what queer Black life would have been like at that time in Atlanta. And so creating this story about, Sylvia and kind of the life that she lives there and her friends. And so I had this idea of like a party and queer people, and all of this came to me really. That's one of the first things that I envisioned for the story. And I was just really excited to talk about, to have Bayard Rustin and to have this kind of awesome queer, like almost underground or, secret stuff, but to be able to be there in the room with it. That's one of my favorite things about the book. And I also just love having people have these conversations and these really important conversations about the things that are happening at the time, people kind of talking about their lives in this way that you imagine that they would have. Right. But you get to kind of be right there and hearing it.
Yeah. And I think, there's a version of this book where that part of the book doesn't exist, right? There's a version where it's just Doris's story and we don't get to see this other kind of like insight into the world, into the time. And I think what you've done so beautifully is that, just like you were saying before with the civil rights movement and the different conversations, it's like we're getting to see different conversations of Black Atlanta in the 1960s, where we could see Sylvia and it could be very straight and very still interesting, but like not surprising. And this was just such a surprise and a delightful one for me as a reader to think about, how were people able to be prominent figures in the Black community and also be outwardly queer amongst their communities. And I just really was delighted by these sections.
Yeah, and it was really great to write. And Coretta Scott King, who appears in the novel and is my favorite of the icons who appear in the novel. And the first one I knew I wanted to have in there. Yeah, I knew I wanted to have her in there. But Coretta Scott King, who's a very she was a fascinating person, a really, really interesting, fascinating person. And she had excellent politics, you know, and had a lot of gay friends and was all about the gay rights. And so I'm looking at Coretta Scott King being all about the gay rights, and I'm going, well, she must have, you know, like that, you know,
Right.
like what was she doing in the 1960s? She probably had some gay friends, you know, like
Right.
I know Black Atlanta was just, I know there's plenty of gay Black people there, and so if she's there and they're there, and she is a person who believes in gay rights and went on to, you know, advocate for gay rights, then I know that didn't start, you know, in the 80s, you know, like I know that was already happening.
Right.
And so then that leads me into the question of, okay, well, how do I connect those things? Like how, and so then Coretta Scott becomes sort of the way we sort of link the two things, right? Which is great. And I'm really excited about, I just love her. I love her. Like, I'm like, oh, you know, and I'm really excited that she has appeared in my novel.
Yeah.
I feel very honored that she appeared in my novel.
Yeah. I love that. And I love because you know what happens so much, I think, in books and in storytelling is that we are told that something was seen differently in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the way that it was. Like I think about how we're told about slavery and it's like, well, that it was just a different time and people just owned other people and that's how it was. And it's like, oh, okay, so you're just erasing all the people who knew that slavery was a bad thing at the time.
Exactly.
And I feel like what your book does is it pushes back against this idea of like homosexuality was so taboo and nobody was gay and everybody was straight and everybody was married. And it's like, okay, yeah, people were married for sure. But also, gay people have existed and they didn't just pop up in the 1980s, right?
People be gay. People be gay.
People
like Quinta Brunson
be gay,
says.
been gay,
been
stay gay,
right.
will be gay.
Right.
And I think that this is, I just feel like it's just, again, I keep saying delightful. I'm like smiling as I say this, but I just felt like the representation felt so rooted and grounded and not like, oh, this person from the future is coming back to like have an agenda or whatever some awful person would say. But it's like this, of course, this is what was going on.
Right.
And it, you know, and I think about also like 1930s Germany and how during the Weimar Republic, like that was a super gay time in Berlin. Right.
Yep.
And it's like, and that this is sort of a version of that we get to see. And it's like, it's always happened. It's always been a part of our communities and our society. And it's fun to get to go back and see it just like exist.
Right. I mean, Byron Rustin was out. Like he was,
he was out.
He was an out gay man.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
you know,
yes.
and so, and
but they'd have you think that it was like just him. Like he was just the only gay man ever. And he like actually wasn't in any gay relationships because he was just like you know, like it's like, this idea.
But I just think that like the fact that he was out though, you know, even if you fool yourself into thinking he was the only one, he was rolling deep with these icons, these other icons too. And they were right that, you know, like, and so it's not, so you can't sort of pretend that like, you know, like you think they were just like, we are just very against everything about you, Bayer, but let's work together. Let's just like work together so closely, like on everything that we do, even though we completely disapprove of you. Like, no, that's not how it was, you know, like that there is a different story. And if you look and you do your research and you actually understand the ways that people work together and like, and also just like, there is in particularly in Black, you know, culture and community and history, there's always been gay people just everywhere, like every church, you know, like, I don't know if y'all been to Black church, but there's just a lot of gay people there. And there've always been a lot of gay people there. And there's just never been, you know, if you're looking at, you know, the civil rights movement, which a lot of it, you know, churches were big, were places where a lot of things were organized and took place. And there are just going to have been many, many, many gay people there because there always have been. And so when I'm doing my research and I'm going back and I'm finding these conversations and I'm looking at the things that, for example, again, Coretta Scott King was involved in throughout her life, the things that she cared about throughout her life, like I know I can put the pieces together. I can connect the dots and say that this is a reasonable thing to imagine she would have felt and said and done, even if people want to, you know, pretend that that's not the way things happen.
Right. Because people love to sort of project their own ideas and thoughts and prejudices on historical
Right.
figures based on, this was the time. Like,
Right.
okay, well, you know.
Right.
Um, so speaking of, I guess this isn't really speaking of, but I do want to talk about the title and the cover of this book. The book is called These Heathens. Tell us about, I mean, the title comes up pretty quickly in the book, and the word heathens comes up a few times throughout the book, which, first of all, just like such a good word.
Yeah. So
Heathens.
good.
It's good in the mouth. It feels good as you say it. It looks good on the page. I just love it. But how did you come with the title, These Heathens? Was that always the title of the book?
That wasn't the title. That wasn't always the title. And it was a bit of a process. I do find titles difficult
Okay.
to come up with because I'm trying to sort of, sometimes it's hard to feel like something is sort of capturing everything. So originally the title was Doris Steele, which is the name of the main character, which is my grandmother's maiden name. And I was very attached to that name because it's very sentimental, obviously, to me. And my editor actually was like, I feel like the title doesn't stick with people enough. And she's like, how is it? She's not like change it or anything, but she's like, are you really married to this? Like, how? And I was like, yes, ma'am, I'm married to it. But then, I also, I'm not the person who needs to be convinced to read the book. So I'm also, like, okay, well, let me think about it. Let me think about some other possibilities. So we did some brainstorming, my editor and I and my agent, and we came up with some possibilities. And then it was really this process of like voting. I asked my friends a bunch of, we had a bunch of different titles and which one do you like the best? I liked These Heathens a lot, but there was a couple others I liked also. And so it just became this kind of thing where a lot of people of my friends voted for These Heathens. And there was another one they liked a lot that I'm not going to be remembering the name of or what that title was.
I wanted you to remember so bad. I want to know.
Oh, let me think. Okay. These Heathens and what was it? I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
But yeah, it was this and something else. And then I think I decided on this because it's very voicey. It's very much in Doris's voice. She does talk about heathens and she's always calling somebody a heathen.
Yeah.
And it's like funny. And I also just feel like especially Black people get what this means. They really get this concept of like, oh, Lord, these heathens. Like, and so that it felt really, really like the right thing. Once I chose it, I was like, okay, I think this is the one. I like it. And then over time, I love it. Like I was saying to my editor just a couple of weeks ago, like, I'm so glad that we chose this title. Like, I love it. It's so perfect. Yeah, it's great.
I love it. And did you have anything to do with the cover? Were you at all involved in that process?
So my thing is I don't want to be involved in the cover process, but somehow I always get pulled into it. But I don't want to be involved in it because I just have too many opinions. And I just feel like, I'm not a cover expert. Like, don't ask me. Like, I'm going to have 50 opinions and like, what do I even know? The Sky Falling, I feel like the Sky Falling cover is literally exactly what I asked for it to be. And that feels good because it's a really, really cool cover. And I love it. It turned out great. But this cover, I love this cover, and it is not, I have no input into it. Except like there was an earlier cover that had a lot of input into it, and it just didn't end up working out. And so I was like, I'm returning to my position of please don't ask me. Just please don't ask me. Y'all got this. Y'all are the experts. And my editor and all the talented people at Random House came up with this. And I just love it. I love it. It's so cool. It just fits the time period so well. It's like so queer, like right there on the cover. It's got, that's a Black celebrity elements to it. Atlanta, the whole thing. So yeah, I love this thing. It's great.
I love the cover too. I think it's such a nice, it's like such a good package between the title and the cover. And then obviously what's inside, is as good as. So it's really a delightful read. Is there anything that's not in the book that you wish was?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the thing about a novel is you can write it forever.
Sure.
You can just keep writing and keep writing it. There's just so many things you can say and so much you can do. But I think it's great. I think it's great. There's nothing that I feel like if there was anything else, it would just be a whole nother book, like a whole, a whole extra book because there's just so much to delve into. But no, I'm really happy with what's in there.
And aside from Doris and the actual real life people, how do you name your characters?
Well, the main way that I name a character, well, there's two main ways. So some names I just really like and are they're not necessarily all that interesting of names, but I just like them. Like Kate with a C is a name that I just like. I just like that. Something that just is in my head that works. There are a lot of people, the last name Lucas I shouldn't say a lot. There's a Lucas in this one, last name Lucas, and there's a Lucas in Sky Falling also, because my favorite teacher when I was a kid was Mrs. Lucas. And so that's where that comes from. And besides that, for most characters, what I do is I look at the Social Security Administration's list of names for the year that person was born. And then I find names that, that they would have been named based on that. And whatever on finding things on that list that really resonate with me. Sometimes names will have a particular, like, they'll feel right because I knew somebody from church, when I was, 8 who had that name or something. And so they remind me of the character or something like that. But that's usually the way that it goes.
Yeah. And how do you like to write? How many hours a day? How often? Music or no? In the home, out of the home, snacks and beverages, rituals? Tell me about it.
Yeah. I don't like to have any noise, any music or anything, because my brain will just go to the music. Like, and it won't stay with the story. Snacks for sure. Lots of, popcorn. I like a kettle corn situation. I do eat way too much of it though sometimes. And it just like, I'm just like, why did I eat the whole bag of kettle corn? Yeah, I feel like I'm not as, I shouldn't judge myself, but like, I want to have some sort of ritual. I was talking to someone a couple of months ago who was a visual artist, and she was talking about like rituals to kind of get her into the place of starting to work. And I just kind of fall into it. I'm just kind of like, oh, right now I'm washing dishes. Boom, I'm writing, like I have nothing that's like easing me kind of into getting me kind of into writing mode. And so I have this idea ever since then. I mean, this was months ago and I still haven't done it. So we'll see. But then I'm going to I need to give myself some kind of like ritual to move into, emotionally move into writing. But mostly my process is just kind of all, I do outline, like I said, I have an outline and I sort of have a process for kind of building the story. But as far as what I'm, I might be in my office in the winter. I don't like to be in my home office because I have a fireplace in the living room. So I just want to be by the fireplace. So I might just be in the fireplace, not in it, by the fireplace. Sometimes, when the weather is nice outside under the trees. So I could kind of be anywhere that feels good. But I need a lot of sort of, I guess I would call it when I first sit down to write, it usually takes a while for me to kind of get where I need to be. I always say, if there's a day where I'm dropping my kids off at school and picking them up, as opposed to my co-parent picking them up or dropping them off, I have to do both, right? There's only 6 hours in between. That is the day I'm not going to write because that's not enough. I need, I need way more time because I need to slowly get into writing mode before I can actually get anything done. But if I got 8 hours or more, then I'm able to do a lot.
Got it. So it takes you time to kind of ramp up and get
it really does. Yeah.
I see. This is where the ritual would come in.
Right. Exactly. That's why I need a ritual. So I can be okay, I did my thing. I did whatever it was at the thing. And now I'm mentally prepared. And I'm ready to go.
Do you know who Twyla Tharp is?
That sounds really familiar.
Really famous choreographer. And she has a book called The Creative Habit, which I love. And she talks a lot about the pre-work ritual and the book is all about being creative, but you should check it out and see if it inspires you to come up with your own ritual. Hers is going into the studio and she just puts music on and moves. No pen, no paper, just does her thing.
Right.
But when I have a lot of work to do, I will sit down and I will light a candle. And I only light my candle on days where I know I'm going to have a lot of time. You, I also have kids that I have to take and pick up, and on days
Right.
where I'm doing both and I have like a lot of interviews, I don't light a candle because I'm like, I'm not
Right.
actually going to really work. I'm going to be
Right.
doing other things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I like a ritual. So I'm encouraging you to find whatever feels right for you. But it doesn't have to be a big thing
Right.
either.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I really want to do it. I'm going to. I've decided.
Okay.
You've
Report
inspired
back
me
when
all
you
over
come
again.
up with
I'm gonna do it.
one.
Okay,
Report
good.
back
Yeah,
and let me know
I
what
will.
it is.
I will. I'm also going to report back with the other title.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It's going to
Please
stay
do.
in my head until I do
Please
that.
do. I'll throw it up on socials or whatever.
Great.
What's a word you can never spell correctly on the first try?
Yeah, I'm going to be really honest and say that I am an excellent speller. Like, I am an excellent speller. I always have been. I'm sorry. I always have been since I was a kid, like in Mrs. Lucas's class.
Okay.
You know, I am an excellent speller and I'm excellent at the grammar. Like that is just, yeah. So I don't have a word like that. Sorry.
Wow. I love the confidence, honestly. Like you are what I hope to be one day.
What's yours? Okay, what can you never spell?
Oh, I can't spell any words. I just discovered I can't spell thief. I put an E before the I there. Recommendation I cannot spell. I mean, honestly, any word, it could be a potential landmine for me.
Yeah.
I am truly an abominable word I can't spell speller. Like I it's everything. Wow. Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, it's food, it's beverage, it's lots of consonants, it's lots of vowels, it's rhythm, can't spell rhythm, can't spell athletic, can't spell athlete, just and everything.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I can even spell Massachusetts. Like I can even do that. That one is tricky because S's hard. And T's and like, what is going on here? But yeah, I can do it first try.
The only word I can spell that comes up a lot on this podcast that people say they can't spell is restaurant. Apparently restaurant is a very controversial word.
Interesting.
Many of the biggest and brightest names who have come on this podcast have said restaurant. We literally have like a restaurant club now. And that's the only word that I'm like, you can't spell restaurant?
Yeah,
how dumb are you? And then I'm over here like thief, dog. I can't spell anything else.
You over here putting a PH on the end of thief?
Yes.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm like, how many E's? And then I'm like, thieves. Like there's basically no word that I can spell confidently except for restaurant and sometimes my own name. But like even McKenzie, when I was like working on this, I was like, let me double check that spelling because it could be anything. I can do Mia. I could do Mia.
Oh, that's great. That's
good. On your website, it says writer, author, queer icon, auntie, but icon is crossed out. Right. I need to know more about this.
So I consider myself a queer icon, and I have a strong standing in the queer community as an author, as a writer and activist, and creator of Black Girl Dangerous, which had a huge impact on the culture and the queer Black culture and the queer POC culture and the kind of media landscape. But I'm at a point in my life where like that kind of visibility, I shun it now. Like I, like I just don't ask me about the stuff, the politics anymore. I don't want to talk about it. So like this, it signifies a shift from like, yeah, now I'm the auntie. Like let's chat about, let's chat about coffee and bourbon and books, and that's what I'm into now. I still talk about the politics with my friends, but I don't get involved in too much of that in the online space anymore.
Okay, that makes sense. Because I was like, I don't know. I think she's still kind of an icon. I don't know what's going on here. For people who love these heathens, what are some other books you might recommend to them that are in conversation with it?
Oh, that's a good question. So one of the books that inspired, I like, I mean, I don't have to tell anybody to read this because it's like a hugely popular book, but The Good Lord Bird by James McBride was a book that I read some years ago and absolutely loved it and was like, this is amazing. And it got me sort of thinking about historical fiction. And then I read, American Spy. Which is another historical fiction, very cool, fun. Lauren Wilkinson, American Spy, really good. And so I feel like those two books were kind of the books that I read that led me to deciding that I wanted to write a historical fiction. So I recommend those, especially Lauren Wilkinson, because everybody's already read The Good Lord Bird or watched the TV series or whatever. Also, there's this book, This Nonviolent Stuff Will Get You Killed. Nonfiction, that talks about that part of the movement that wasn't nonviolent resistance, which I actually read years ago, but just stayed with me and was on my mind a lot as I read this novel. And actually, like when I talk about going in and reading and taking really specific things, there's even a character in this book that's based on someone that I read about in that book. So yeah, those are 3 books that I would recommend.
I love that. Okay, last question. If you could have one person, dead or alive, read this book, who would you want it to be?
Oh, my grandmother, for sure. Yeah, absolutely her. She would love it. She would be so into it. She would be laughing like so much at it. Yeah, absolutely her, without a doubt.
I love it. Well, everybody, you can get your copy of These Heathens now wherever books are sold. Make sure you request it at your library as well. Mia, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. This has been great. I really enjoyed it. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. And everyone else, we will see you in the stacks. All right, y'all, that does it for us today. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you again to Mia McKenzie for being my guest. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to Aaron Richards and Maria Burkell for making today's episode possible. Remember, our book club pick this month is The Art Thief by Michael Finkel, which we will discuss on Wednesday, June 25th with Kira O'Sullivan. If you love the show and you want inside access to it, head to patreon.com/thestacks and join the Stacks Pack, and check out my newsletter at tracythomas.substack.com. Make sure you're subscribed to The Stacks wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you're listening through Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave us a rating and a review. For more from The Stacks, follow us on social media at The Stacks Pod on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. And check out our website at thestackspodcast.com. Today's episode of The Stacks was edited by Christian Duenas with production assistance from Waikia Freelo. Our graphic designer is Robin McCrite, and our theme music is from Tigirigis. The Stacks is created and produced by me, Tracy Thomas.